McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. A little earlier than normal. Hopefully you awake there, Mike. You on your first Diet Coke or your second?
Actually, I just finished my first, and the second one is sitting next to me, ready to be cracked open.
All right, so you'll be a little not quite as excitable as last week then, or maybe you will be.
I'll be all right. I'll be all right.
All right, you make it through. All right, bud.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting week we're getting down. This is a great time of year for the fall sports as you're right before the playoffs for field hockey and soccer, and you're kind of getting into some big matches in terms of tennis, volleyball, and cross country. So this is really the best time of year for the fall sports. You kind of see who's who. You're getting teams winning titles, winning conferences. What's your takeaway from the past week in sports?
Well, I think, like you said, we're hitting the peak of the high school fall sports season. The cross country championships begin next weekend, and we're also heading into after next weekend we'll know all the playoff matchups and stuff. And you're seeing a lot of, like you said, a lot of key games. I'm on my way right now over to Gloucester to see two football programs that have practically come back from the dead this season. It'll be a 4-2 Pleasantville against a 3-3 Gloucester Catholic. And Gloucester Catholic began the season with a 25-game losing streak, and Pleasantville began the season with a 20-game losing streak. And now both those teams are in playoff contention. So, I mean, that's really these are two teams that have kind of taken advantage of the move to the West Jersey Football League, the schedule that the WENJ-FM provides that allows teams to play, similar enrollments and similar abilities. And if you had told me before the season I was going to be at the Pleasantville Gloucester Catholic game on a Saturday afternoon, I would have told you were crazy. But I'm headed there right now.
Well, it should be a nice day. It's supposed to warm up to about 60. Some sunshine out there, so not a bad fall day to be taking a little ride over to Gloucester.
No, absolutely. And, like you said, Pleasantville is really one of the best stories of the high school football season. Chris Sacco, a second-year coach, has gone in there. A lot of energy has kind of turned that program around. LaQuay Athill at quarterback has really had an excellent season. And, they're in a position where if they were to beat Gloucester Catholic today and then play Middle Township next Friday night, and what could be a play-in game between those two teams, Pleasantville could actually make the South Jersey Group 2 playoffs, which would be a tremendous boost for that program and the school. That's saying something because that's, generally speaking, one of the tougher brackets to get into. There's a lot of great teams in that South Jersey, too. So, that like you said, that should be an exciting game next week. Yeah, absolutely. A tough bracket. A couple of years ago, I think Cedar Creek won either they were 6-2 or maybe even 7-1 at the cutoff date, and they didn't get in South Jersey Group 2. So it's always a tough bracket to get in. A lot of big teams. We mentioned Cedar Creek, big win over Haddonfield last night, 17-14. They probably, clinched the playoff spot or clinched at least a home playoff game, maybe even a home playoff game with that big win last night in Haddonfield. As Pat Moran does it again with a field goal in the fourth quarter this time to give Cedar Creek another big victory. Talking with Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City. Mike, we keep saying, okay, this is the week the prep's going to be tested, and each week they keep responding and blowing out some really good teams. And same thing happened last night as they won 42-0 over St. Joe. I mean, is this the best team in South Jersey? We have them number one in our Press Elite 11. I think you can look at, it's either them or Timber Creek. We think it's them. And don't forget about Tom's River North, the defending South Jersey Group 5 champion, who we have as number 2, who a lot of people don't think of as a conventional South Jersey team, but they are also undefeated and an outstanding team and the favorite to win South Jersey Group 5. You're exactly right, though. I thought, before last night's game, I thought St. Augustine was going to win the game, but, the St. Joe defense has been so tough this season and really, has played so well. I thought they were going to be able to slow down St. Augustine a little bit, and they didn't slow St. Augustine down at all. St. Augustine, as I wrote about in today's paper and on pressofac.com, they come out, they've got, on their first possession of the game, big rivalry game, packed stands. They've got 4th and 1 from their own 41-yard line, and they don't hesitate at all. They just stay out on the field. 99.9% of other teams in a big rivalry game would have punted there. St. Augustine went for it. They picked up the first down, and they didn't stop moving forward the rest of the night. They really just dominated the game and really gave one of the most impressive performances I've seen in all the years I've been covering high school football. And now, they've got another big game next Friday night. They host an undefeated Vineland team in a game that will go a long way towards deciding the WENJ-FM Continental Division. And then it'll be a game against a North Jersey non-public power, a Bergen Catholic, maybe a Paramus Catholic, and it'll be really interesting to see how this St. Augustine team plays against a North Jersey parochial power, because it's hard to imagine the St. Augustine team getting shut out this year as they were last year in the playoffs. I mean, I just think this team is too good this year, so it'll be very interesting to see how they match up against the North Jersey schools this season.
Mike, Cole and I were talking previously in the show about some of the storylines of the high school football season, and we mentioned Pleasantville, obviously. I think one of the storylines definitely is the play of Josh Zamot, the quarterback of St. Augustine. When you consider the fact that he's taken over for a 3-year starter in Jose Tabora, who really was the heart and soul of that team, and to step in as a junior in your first season and to do what he's done, you got to be impressed by what he's doing this year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his ability to throw and run the football has given St. Augustine a dimension, an offensive dimension that they haven't had in past years. And here's what you need to know about St. Augustine. They come out in the first series of the game. They have Kyle Dobbins, who ran for 106 yards and 3 touchdowns. Leads, the Tustin Atlantic City area in rushing. He's rushed for more than 1,100 yards. And on the first drive of the game, he lines up as wide receiver and barely touches the football. So, I mean, that gives you an idea of how many talented football players at the skill position St. Augustine has when they take the leading rusher in the area and line him up as wide receiver and barely give him the ball on the first possession of the game, and they still go down and score. So, I mean, that gives you an idea of just how talented the Hermits are as a high school football team.
It's kind of funny you mention that, Mike, because I was at their season opener against Malvern. I think you were there too. And
right.
Remember the first couple plays, Dobbins didn't touch the ball, and all the fans are like, "Hey, give it to the guy who had 1,700 yards last year."
Right, exactly. But
so
they've got a lot of talent.
Coach Reardon getting questioned in the first series of the year. So
yeah, I mean, they've got so much talent. I mean, Ezekiel Innes at wide receiver really gives them another dimension too, and really they kind of use Innes to dictate what they do a little bit. He's so if they play off him like St. Joe was kind of playing off him, they just throw short passes to him. And it almost works his runs because they throw short passes to him, and it's 5, 6, 7 yards, and he can always break one if the cornerbacks come up on him and play him tight. Then they look to hit in his deep like they did in the second quarter against Holy Spirit 2 weeks ago when they hit him with a long pass to sort of break that game open. So they're very tough to defend, and as I said, it'll be obviously a big game this Friday night against a Vineland team that has been very impressive this season and is one of the season's best stories. 7-0 for the first time since 2003. And then they go play a North Jersey team in the playoffs, and it'll be very interesting to see how St. Augustine matches up with the North Jersey parochial powers this season.
Yeah, I think the key next week for Vineland is going to be, can the Fighting Clan be patient enough with the running game? If they do get down by a score or two, can they keep giving it to Seymour and Pacheco, and even if they're not getting yards, just keep trying to pound that defense? I don't know if they can be patient enough to stay with that. That'll be a big question next week, I believe.
Well, I think that's the key. Anytime you play St. Augustine, what do you want to do? They got tremendous skill position guys. What do you want to do? You want to keep those skill guys off the field on offense. So how do you do that? You control the football. And Vineland has a running game with Isaiah Pacheco at quarterback, Davon Seymour at running back, Cash Phillips at running back. They mix in some passes to tight end Liam Anderson. And Vineland is a big team. They've got big physical players. Daquan Cosby at linebacker leads the defense. Vineland is impressive. So that's how you do it. You got to control the football on the ground. If you have the football, St. Augustine can't score. So that's the recipe. Everybody kind of knows what it is. So far this season, no one's been able to do it. Can Vineland go into St. Augustine next Friday and do it? Control the football, keep the St. Augustine offense on the sidelines, shorten the game, and come out with an upset. We'll find out.
It's one thing to know it, it's another thing to do it, right?
Exactly. No one's been able to do it so far. I mean, I think the road today, St. Augustine is 8-0. They've scored more than 40 points in every one of their games, and their average margin of victory, I think, is 33.5 points. So everybody goes in there with a plan. Holy Spirit executed it for a quarter. Unfortunately, the game is 4 quarters,
Yep.
So that's the plan. Run the football, take time off the clock, keep the Hermits offense on the sideline. Violent will try to do it. So far, no one's been able to do it this season. But like you said, Violent with Davon Seymour, Tash Phillips, Isaiah Pacheco, has some impressive players. And if somebody could do it, it probably is Violent.
It's like Mike Tyson used to say, everybody's got a plan until they get hit.
Right, exactly. Until, the prep comes out and does what they do. But, it should be another big crowd at St. Augustine next Friday night.
Good stuff, Mike. We'll let you get going. Enjoy the game out there today, and we'll catch up with you next week.
All right, Sully. Thanks a lot. Anytime.
All right. Have a good weekend, buddy.
See you later, buddy.
That was Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. Always does a great job